I am Brandon Clark. This is my co-host Swall Hall, and today we're meeting on Uncommon Grounds, and we have quite the slew of topics to talk about. We have a merger possibly between Warner Bros. Acquiring Netflix that has both sides, maybe more the left, I guess, up in flames about it, but both sides talking about it at least. And then we have Samantha Fulnecky, the essay that has taken over mainstream media, as well as some boat strikes, a doubling back on one of the boats that also has people up in flames. And then we're going to end with a new segment where we're essentially defending each other's positions. We'll discuss more when I get there. I've tentatively thought about naming it flipping the script, but I haven't, we haven't talked about that.
Okay.
So we'll get there when we get there. Swa, however, is the pop culture specialist. So he's going to take us away on the Warner Bros. Stuff.
Yeah, so when we had initially chosen this topic, it was that Netflix and Warner Brothers were going to be joining and becoming one company. Netflix was going to be purchasing Warner Brothers, and this would have just been the film and TV side. So like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, HBO, all that stuff. And then everybody knows Netflix, Stranger Things, all that jazz. But like yesterday or the day before, Paramount and everyone's favorite multi-billionaire David or Larry Ellison and the Ellison family got involved, some Saudi princes, and now Paramount has made 108 billion dollar offer to do a hostile takeover. And so this would be essentially they would be buying so many shares of the company that they would essentially elect their own board members, vote out all the other board members, and then vote for Paramount to get the company instead.
So wait,
So
this
yeah,
is of Netflix or Warner? Like who are they
of
trying
Warner
to?
Brothers, of Warner Brothers.
So
So
Paramount's trying to buy Warner Brothers now.
yes.
Okay.
But like forcefully by trying to just buy enough shares that they essentially control the company anyways, and then vote yes, we want to be bought. But Larry Ellison, who I believe now has surpassed Elon, he might be. I don't know. They switch every other day depending on stocks. The
Right.
richest guy in the world is like a big investor in Paramount. And the reason that this has anything to do with our show is Ellison and all of them are really cozy with Trump and this current administration. And so there's sort of, I don't know if it's true, but there's rumors going around. They would own CNN at this point. And so there's rumors going around that they would be making some political changes to CNN and that Trump is kind of involved behind the scene. Of course, it's all rumors. The other concern is, of course, having one company own basically all entertainment. Like if it's Paramount, then we're talking about the same company that owns Nickelodeon, owning Cartoon Network,
Yeah.
Harry Potter, Avatar, Mission Impossible, all of like half of our movies. If it's Netflix, then we're talking about the same people who do like Knives Out, Stranger Things. I'm trying to think of all the other Netflix stuff, but either way, yeah, I have my thoughts on this as a guy who consumes pop culture a lot, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on sort of the billionaire Saudi prince rumor stuff, and then like the merger and like the monopoly side of things.
Sure. Okay. So let's do the Larry Ellison, the Paramount stuff first, because
Yeah,
I didn't even,
yeah,
I'm
you
a
didn't know that?
politics guy.
Yeah.
I'm not caught up on that. That sounds kind of crazy to me. So currently Warner Bros. Do you know who it's owned by?
So yeah, Warner Bros. Right now is Warner Brothers and Discovery Channel. So
Hmm.
the Discovery Channel actually purchased Warner Brothers like 5 years ago, and their CEO basically was trying to bring it back from it was about to go under, and so that's why they bought it and they like rehabilitated it to sell. And so right now it's just a company called Warner Brother Discovery.
And I was gonna say, if I'm correct, they have like HBO, like
Yep.
DC,
Yep.
like a
DC, Lord of the
lot of
Rings, Harry
like,
Potter,
yeah. So
Studio Ghibli,
and
the English
Paramount.
versions.
So okay, how I'm curious on because for me it sounds like something the FTC should block, right? The Federal Trade
Yes.
Commission, which I guess I don't know how much you know about like the FTC side of things, but in terms of like the entertainment side of things, are people like this is a bad move? Are they
Yes.
and which one are they more leaning against, or is it both of them? Are they like we don't want Warner Bros. To take Netflix, we don't want Paramount to like? What's the
Yeah,
kind
so
of?
so the Directors Guild of America, which is just every director, basically to direct a movie and have it distributed into the theaters, you have to be a part of the Directors Guild. Same thing with actors. You have to sign up even if you have one speaking line. If you have a speaking line, you're in the guild.
Okay.
So they wrote a formal letter when it was announced that it was going to be Netflix saying like we do not want this at all because one, the monopoly side of it, and then two, Netflix is a streamer, and they've been very vocal about shortening the amount of time that movies play in the theater because they want them all on their service.
Okay.
And so, like, I don't know if you've heard of the new Frankenstein movie that came out like a couple months ago, but like that was in theaters for like 2 weeks everywhere, and then each week less and less theaters because they wanted it on streaming. So that's why the directors were like, we don't want that because we don't want to, release. What's the movie that's out right now? What's the kids' movie? Zootopia 2, and it just ends up on HBO Max like the next week.
Yeah. Because I
That's not
assume then obviously everyone gets paid less on streaming services because you don't get a big
exactly.
box office.
Yep, exactly. And a lot of people get paid by what's called points. And so if a movie makes like $300 million, they'll get like 1% of that. I don't know what that is, 300,000 or something. And so if it's only in theaters for a week, it can only
Yeah.
make so much money. And then obviously the monopoly thing, they want more creators, more voices. And I think we all want that. So there's that side of it. And then
I wonder what the
now,
fix to that is. To me, the only thing that comes to my mind is I don't think you can mix streamers and these companies that produce movies. I don't know any other way you could fix that because if you mix them, any movie that the company that owns Netflix makes, they're gonna want on Netflix. So it's like
exactly.
sounds like a
Exactly.
mess.
And hilariously, Warner Brothers is notorious for this. They actually, I'm sure you know the director Christopher Nolan. He did Dark Knight and all that. He was exclusive with Warner Brothers for like most of his film career, like 20 some years. And then during the pandemic, they did this thing called Day and Date, where they would drop, the new Batman movie the same day that it's in theaters. You can just watch it at home. And Christopher Nolan tore them apart for that, left the company, and did Oppenheimer, which would go on to be his biggest film of all time, almost hitting $1 billion, with Universal instead because he believes in the movie theater industry. And so, yeah, so there's that whole thing. And so most people were against the Netflix thing, but the reason that the FTC would allow the Netflix thing to go through is technically, and it's a technicality for sure, it's a different industry. It's
Yeah.
streaming. They're a streaming. You could argue tech company. It's a digital platform. It's coding. Like it's a tech company.
Mhm.
So it would be like Apple buying a movie studio. That's not.
Where
Those
are
are two
you
different things.
where are you on it? Would
On the
you
monopoly side,
like are you they shouldn't allow this? Are you if it goes, it goes? Like what's your position?
so I have mixed feelings because as a consumer, I'm like the less streaming services I can pay for and get as more content. Like, of course, I'm thinking about my own pockets there.
Right.
But what I am not factoring in, what a lot of people point out is, yes, but when Disney bought Fox back in whenever that was, the Star Wars, Alien, Predator, all those things. The year before they bought them, Fox had like 23 movies. The year that they bought them, they had 13, and every year since then it's gone down from 13 to 10 to 7, and now I think this year Fox put out like 4 movies.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have Harry Potter and Avatar and iCarly all on one thing, but it's like, no, they just won't make iCarly. They won't make as many Harry Potters because they'll have to consolidate. So I see both sides of it. I'm less worried about the monopoly with Netflix because, like I said, it is technically a different industry, whereas Paramount is just another movie studio. So that would just be like a super studio at that point.
So when I was seeing people talk about it, a lot of like the analogy that I saw that I thought would be pertinent, again, I don't know a lot about like the entertainment industry, was it would be kind of like if McDonald's bought Tyson Chicken and then they were like, nobody else can use Tyson Chicken, or like Kroger bought like Tyson Chicken and was like, Walmart can't, they're like technically different industries. They
Yes.
also are like almost 1-to-1 in terms of who else they affect.
The McDonald's Tyson is a very good one because it's like, yeah, one is a restaurant chain, the other is a chicken manufacturer
Yeah.
to sell in grocery stores. So it's like it's not the same, but also
It
it's
really is
kind
going to
of the
hurt
same. But
competitiveness kind of.
but Paramount in this would be like or maybe not. I'm trying to think of another chicken company. What's
I don't know any.
another
I'm a
brand in the
vegetarian.
store? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Great
Uh,
value.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Great value. Let's just use a different thing. McDonald's buying Burger King versus Walmart buying McDonald's. They both do food, Walmart and McDonald's, but Walmart does a little bit else
Yeah.
too.
Hmm.
Whereas Burger King by McDonald's would just be like, okay, well now we just have like either one less restaurant or they'd homogenize all the food, whatever they would end up doing. So I lean towards Netflix, but I do share the same fears of them destroying the movie theater industry.
Yeah.
So, like that's a concern, but I don't like the idea of Larry Ellison already owns TNT, Skydance, Paramount. He owns so many movie things that I'm like, plus I don't like the idea of like Saudi princes getting involved and like all
Yeah,
this
that
other
that
offshore stuff.
that's where you lose me is when you
Yeah.
own so many different points already, kind of, and then you
Yeah.
have HBO, which is that like so they own like HBO Max, right?
Yep.
And then
HBO
so then
Max.
they'd be taking Netflix with that. And then
Yep.
on top of that, they own like all the DC stuff. There's the Netflix exclusives. Like it's gonna take the competitiveness away from other streaming platforms that just won't have the same catalog that they have, which then let
Correct.
them raise prices because who's going to keep up? You want all the good stuff on Netflix, now you got to pay $40 a month.
Correct.
And so like it's I mean that's just economics 101. So that's the way that I see it. And I'm sure you share those concerns, but
Yeah, I do. And like I said, I like on one hand, immediately, like I said, as a nerd, my mind goes to, oh, sweet. Like I can watch The Lord of the Rings and then immediately watch my favorite anime movie on the same thing. And then, oh, catch the new season of Stranger Things. But then, like you said, yeah, for twice the price and half the amount of seasons and half the amount of budgets because,
yeah.
they got to make cuts at a certain point and they're dealing with now one set of books rather than like multiple financial situations.
I love
So
that you named
I don't
three
know.
things there, and I've never watched any of those Lord of the Rings or Stranger Things or any anime show ever. So
That's great. You've never watched an anime?
unless like you count like Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon.
I do, but yeah,
I
those are like that's like baby's first anime.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if they count, but I like grew up
Yeah,
like those were like my
yeah.
I love
That's how I
Pokemon. I
got
love
into it
Pokemon
first.
if you can't tell. So like
Yes, yes. There's Charizard back there, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Charmeleon, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, not much else to talk about besides obviously I think we both agree nobody wants a monopoly. I think we both agree we don't want like a bunch of foreign interests involved, especially once you start talking about because the Paramount bid is for everything that Warner Brothers owns. So that includes the Discovery Channel, that includes CNN, that includes whereas Netflix would just be buying the movie stuff. They don't care about TV channels
Yeah.
because they're a streamer. They don't give a crap about CNN or TNT or anything like that. So it scares me more on the Paramount side just because, like I said, with
Control.
Trump being like besties with this guy and foreign interest being besties with this guy, and it just feels more slimy. Whereas at least Netflix, I know it's just greed. Like
Right.
I know
Yeah.
it's just, there's no other ulterior motives besides money, money, money. Whereas this is like money, 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 and control, and that freaks me out a little bit more. So
I
yeah,
guess we'll just have to see where it goes. And yeah,
yeah,
from that to another topic that I thought was almost perfectly relevant for our show, just in there was obviously a left-right divide on this.
yes,
I'm left, you're right. There's also the religious topics on it.
yep.
I'm atheist. I almost said I'm religious and you're atheist. I'm atheist, you're religious. We're flipping the script on this one, actually, guys. No, but I don't know if we'll disagree on this or not. I haven't seen you talk about it, so like who knows? I'm sure we'll agree and disagree. That's typically how it goes on things like this between us.
Sure,
But
sure.
for those who don't know, Samantha Fulnecky, Nikki, I might be mispronouncing your last name. She is a college student. She's like pre-med or something. So just keep that in mind when we talk about this. This is like a pre-med college student. She's in it's a psychology class. It was a science class of some sort. I think it was psychology, in which she was asked to read this like academic article, and then they were supposed to give a reaction to it using obviously like they can make claims justified with empirical sources and things like that. Obviously a science class, kind of the nature of science. She took this and it was about, I should add important. It was about gender and like gender, I guess
My understanding was
ideology,
on gender norms. It
gender
wasn't
norms.
actually about gender ideology necessarily,
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's I couldn't think of the word to place it. It was more about gender norms. And she took that to instead of like address this in any scientific sense. She kind of went more religious, using mostly kind of her religious beliefs. She refers to the Bible. I know a lot of people have been saying like she cites the Bible. She doesn't directly cite it necessarily, but she does like refer to Genesis or one text in one place.
Sure.
So obviously she got a 0 on this paper because she didn't follow the rubric. The professor responded to the article, to her article that she submitted to him, with a pretty professional response. There was nothing out of line. However, despite this, she thought that she was having her views disparaged or discriminated against. She took to mainstream media. Fox took this and it blew up. So that's kind of the basis of where we're at. Before I give, I guess, too much of my opinion, Swa, I'll let you jump in with what you've seen, what you think, and then we can have at it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna enter this with a little bit of both sidesing, I guess, a little bit of fence sitting, because on one hand, well, let me talk about the religious aspect of it first. So I think we have freedom of conscience and religion in this country. You're allowed to believe what you believe. You're allowed to whatever. Um, there's going to be consequences for that. Some people might not like you. They might treat you a certain way, whatever. We understand that, but they're both civil. It's civilly protected in our society to express yourself and have your opinion. So I don't have like an issue that she decided to do that, just as like a choice that she made. Now, when it comes to like citing the Bible and stuff, it's hard to say just because I don't know the assignment. Like I know that it's an essay of a kind, but like I don't know what the rules are. I don't know how they described it. If they were told to cite certain things, not to cite. If it's more of an since the article that they were going over was about gender norms in themselves are sort of a subjective thing. Obviously, oh, pink is for girls, boys for or blue is for boys. Like that's not those aren't real facts. Those are just like things that we've kind of created as a society. So I don't know how much opinion like the rest of the students were putting into their like I just don't know the assignment if that makes sense. So that being said, if the leaks and stuff are real, it's just a badly written like essay to begin with. And so on that level, I think that she didn't deserve like an A or anything for sure. Like it was poorly written, grammatical errors all over the place, stuff like that. Um, but if it's just because the teacher was offended, it's a difficult line. And I'm not a professor. I don't know what the rules of the school are. On one hand, what offends somebody is a subjective thing. I might find it offensive that my student didn't wear deodorant that day. That might be offensive, you could say. And so I don't know that there's like an objective reality as to what is offensive and what's not. I know that there are social norms to what's offensive and what's not. And obviously she would know that this is a taboo subject, but like I unless it's like, you know, if them trans, like unless it's like yelling attacking people, I don't think that you should get, you're a 0 for being offensive. If it's just like saying, I believe X and you are offended by that, then you're offended by that. But attacking people is a different thing. So I don't really know how to feel about it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind
so
of my initial thoughts.
I had a couple of notes here because I want to be sure to hit all the points. Yeah,
Yeah.
to I guess respond to a few of the things you said. A lot of it has been released. Like, well, Turning Point, she went to Turning Point USA and they
Yeah.
released the entire like essay. So like what's out is the essay. It's not even like a leak. Like she just
Okay.
published it. But then since then, the rubric's been released. So has even the professor's response. Like the professor responded to her as to like I think it was, I don't know if it was a she or he. So their reasons
Yeah.
why they gave him a 0. And it should be noted that before giving them a 0, they went to another professor to also have them look over the article and the rubric, and they agreed with her assessment or their assessment.
Sure.
And a lot of the reasons was because in science, obviously, you have to back up your claims with evidence. That is like the very basis of science. And she didn't respect that at all. She kind of came in, she made a bunch of absolute claims. At one point, she said that gender stereotypes are fine because God made people this way. That's the exact quote. God made people this way. She doesn't cite any evidence to prove this, anything to back it up. Again, in science, when you make absolute claims, you have to back them up with evidence. if you're not going to act inside the grounds of science in a science class, the best thing you could hope for is a zero. In the professor's response, it was very professional. They point out that she's arguing that people aren't pressured into gendered expectations, while her paper is literally reflecting religious pressure to act in gender stereotypical ways. So the argument she's making, while also not being empirically grounded, contradicts itself, and it's supposed to be a response to the article. So if she's going to go against it, she has to build an argument, and the argument is self-contradictory. She also points to how every single major psychological, medical, pediatric, and psychiatric association acknowledges both that biologically and psychologically, sex and gender isn't binary and isn't fixed, which means that in what she's arguing, that they are fixed and binary, she has a major burden of proof to validate those claims. One that's not made by the Bible, I'm going to be disrespectful because she was, which is a fairy tale, right? It's not an academic source. It's not something you can cite. It would be like me saying I believe in wizards and then citing Harry Potter as my evidence. Literally, it's like a circular logic, or like God's law, or like whatever she was citing, or like some, like, I don't know, like whatever she was trying to do. There's a large burden of proof to contradict all these associations, and she didn't meet that at all. So like, to act like she deserved anything but a zero to me is crazy if you've read the article. And then, as you said, it was also written terribly. So
Yeah, let me address a few things. First, obviously, I gotta defend the Bible a little bit here. I would say the biggest difference between Harry Potter is we know J.K. Rowling wrote it, and we know that J.K. Rowling doesn't claim that it's real, which is a significant difference with the authors of the sacred scriptures. Obviously, not only did they claim it was real, but they died claiming it was real. So it's a little bit of a different thing as far as like a fairy tale where everybody agrees and everybody knows, including the person who wrote it, that it's fake. That aside, because it's not all that relevant. Um, yeah,
hold on, real quick, because I don't want to this argument, and I'll let you go. In a scientific sense, they're equal. Citing those as a source, they have the same significance in science, the Bible or Harry Potter.
Potentially, I could potentially agree with that. I would have to think deeper on it, but certainly just in general, they're not quite the same. But when it comes to a 0 out of 25, again, I haven't seen the rubric. It maybe, last time I was in a class, I was a senior, so it's been quite a long time. So I never went to college. I don't know what the college system is like, but like generally you get like at least some points for doing the assignment. So I could understand like expecting like a 1 out of 25 or maybe a 5 out of 25 or something. But yeah, the thing about this is, I haven't done a lot of research into this. This is a story, a study I know of. From what I understand vaguely in my memory, there's a lot of problems with it, but like there are studies that have been done that she could have cited or attempted to argue from. Like I know there was a guy who took like a set of twins, I'm sure you've heard about this, boys, and tried to raise one of them as a girl, and he ended up like psychologically like super messed up and killed himself at like 20 or something like that, and the one that he raised as a guy was like fine. And so like there are some studies about what's nature versus nurture when it comes to like I like trucks versus I like dolls. Like there are studies out there, whether you think they're valid or not. So she could have made citations that weren't just the Bible. So the fact that she didn't even do that work, I think, is problematic. Just like if you're going to try to defend the Christian claims, do it with your best foot forward. Like don't, something I always appreciated about Ben Shapiro back when I was a Ben Shapiro guy like a decade ago was that, when he would argue abortion or he would argue these things, he would say, I'm leaving the Torah, the Bible, it's got nothing to do. And he would argue based on statistics, based on stuff that at least everyone agrees. Because if we're not talking about the same common language, then you're not going to go get anywhere. Even if the Bible is true and it's 100% fact, it's not going to do you any good to convince somebody who doesn't think that it is fact, So I just think as Christians, you have to know your audience, know who you're talking to if you're trying to convince people of traditional Christian values, that just citing scripture is just not going to convince. It's like back when I was an atheist, they would always tell me like it says in this scripture like the non-believers have hardened their hearts and whatnot, and if they would just pray. And it's like, yeah, but why would I listen to the book that I don't believe in? Like, why would I even, So it's like you got to kind of keep that in mind. But um,
To
big
me,
surprise that, oh, go ahead.
I thought you were done. I didn't mean to
Oh,
cut you.
I was just gonna say, big surprise that Turning Point and the Republicans and Fox and everybody's running like this is like the greatest injustice since the civil rights in the 1960s or something. Like it's just not that deep.
Yeah, yeah, especially like again, like if you read the professor's response, they were like really nice. And they were even like, I implore you to like try something again and come back. Like they were like really kind about it. What I would say is I think it's a bit disrespectful to the institution, to science itself, to the professor, to their class, to not take the assignment seriously in a way that, and like if we're speaking like meta, like the conversation outside of the conversation, this was obviously a grift. Like this is a person who wanted exactly this to happen. She wanted to write this article so she could get this, like, so she could claim religious persecution, so she could get picked up by like Turning Point and Fox News, so she could like start like a career or something, right? That's obviously what's going on. But in terms of like trying to engage in the conversation that's being had of what it's created, it's to me, it's the problem that I always say with religion. Like I try not to be as like brutal with people about their religious beliefs on the grounds of like, like, I don't know, you're a bad person just because you're a Christian. It's different, obviously, if you say things I think make you a bad person on religious grounds. But for me, it's more, I think it's really important to only believe claims you have evidence to believe. And like at the foundation of religion, you have to believe claims without evidence because that's what faith is it's just belief without data to validate it, right? And to me, I think that's dangerous because it leads to things like, I don't know, denying climate change when it's a pertinent issue, denying vaccines when there's a global pandemic, right? Denying or saying that Tylenol causes autism. Like there's slippery slopes of dangerous things that it can lead to, starting with these more silly things of thinking you can cite the Bible in a science class as an academic source. That's like kind of just where I come from on it.
So yeah, obviously I would disagree that it's inherent to religion that it's based without evidence and that that's what faith is. In fact, I would argue um, we call our 2,000-year history of texts and writings and all of this the scholastics. And in fact, as a lot of people are aware, the majority of the universities, the oldest ones that we have, are Catholic or Protestant universities. Science, all of this started from religion. Let's uncover the truths of God's creation. And in doing so, we discovered physics and all these math and all of this stuff from dissecting, oh, the world should make sense if a God made it. And lo and behold, the world makes sense. I would position faith more as there's a girl you really, 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 really like. You go on a lot of dates. You've been dating for a year, maybe 2 years. They treat you well. You treat them well, yada, yada, yada. You don't know that they're not cheating on you. You don't know that if you get married that they're not going to cheat on you in the future. Marriage is supposed to be forever. Who knows who that person's going to be in 30 years? But based on the evidence of how they've acted so far, you're confident that in the future, and that's what
Yeah,
faith is.
no,
And
what you're
so when
describing
it
is
comes to
trust.
religion,
No, what you're describing
yeah,
is
yeah,
trust. And I do
yeah,
think there is some
synonyms,
faith. There is some
synonym.
faith required to have a level of trust, but that's a bit different.
It's not a bit different. Well, at least not from the
You
Catholic
could have
paradigm. We would
faith.
we would equate those things. We
You
would
can have
say
faith without trust.
we wouldn't say so. No, we would say that's
You
not
don't think
faith.
somebody could believe that God is real, but turn against him? I think that doesn't that happen within
Huh?
the Bible? Don't like believers turn against Christ and things? Like you could have faith that God is real, but not trust him, right? Be like, he's bad, so I'm not putting my trust in him. I'm not following him.
Well, okay, well that's a different usage of the word trust.
Well,
That's
I'm
like,
explaining how they're different things. I think that it
well,
does take faith to get the trust, but I think
words are
they're synonymous.
polysemous, so that's just a different usage of the word trust. That's just a different form of trust.
Right. So
Because,
I just think if there's a way to use it that's different, then they're not synonymous. But that's just an
well,
thing, maybe.
but there's different. I mean, if you go Google some word, there's going to be definition one, definition two, definition three. There might be another word that fits definition one that doesn't fit definition two. I mean, that's just English. That's not how synonyms work. But
Yeah, I don't know. You're just trying to
I would
equate
say, for
things.
instance, you
Well,
have
the
faith.
problem is you're equating them, right? And I just think definitionally things aren't equal if there's a difference between them.
What I'm saying is you, you you're not a scientist. You're not an expert on probably any
How do
given
you know?
particular science. But you have a certain level of, you can use the word trust, you can use the word faith, that the individuals who are putting out these articles and these studies and all of this stuff have gone through the education. Same thing, you go to the doctor, you say, oh, my tummy hurt, you assume that that guy went through the classes and wasn't a cheater.
No,
That's faith. That is faith.
I
You have
have
no
trust.
evidence
No, I have
other
trust
than
based on empiricism, verifiable.
other than
I believe in things like
yes,
gravity. I
right.
believe in
and
things like
and that's what
gravity
we
because
that's exactly what we have. Right.
there's not way to verify
But there is. You have evidence. You have evidence that gets you, that
There's
fills in the
not.
gaps.
There's
Yeah,
not, but
because
we don't have to get into that on a Samantha Fulnecky. Maybe we could
well,
debate. We need to think of a way to make this a prompt so we don't waste this as a debate. We can
sure,
think
but I just want to be clear that there is evidence that is not empirical. That's why we put the word empirical in front of it. There's historical evidence, there's experiential evidence, there's testimony, there's way more than just can
No,
I dissect
well,
this thing?
empirical just means
So
verifiable. And I just think that evidence should be verifiable. If you can't verify your evidence, and obviously most things should be verified through different multiple layers that verify each other. Like when we confirm the age of the earth, we don't just use one method and then say that's the age of the earth. We have
right,
multiple methods that come together and they cross-verify that the earth is about 4.5 billion years or 4 billion years old. So
right.
that's why we know that it's not faith, right? It's empirical. There's evidence, there's data to
Well,
back that belief up,
well, yeah, but
which is
take
different than there's, a fairy in the sky that created all of us and
no, like take
he's the
here's
reason
let
evolution
me
exists.
I'll make this quick because this is the best example I can think of is neither of you nor me were there in 1776 when they signed the Declaration of Independence, but we buy that story based on all of the evidence, which is letters people wrote, newspapers from the time. All of that could be fake, and you would have no idea, and I would have no idea. And so we're operating off of non-empirical because we can't verify. We can verify that those documents exist, and we can, test from when they're from, but they could all be forgeries. We don't know if people were lying when they wrote them, and we just have to accept that that's how America was founded, and that's the history. But we can't verify it in the same way that I could go verify that this
Well,
thing, you can't see this, that this thing is,
no,
you can't see it. But I had a McDonald's thing. It was red. You can verify that that's red in a different way than you can. Yes. Argue against it then. You got nothing.
no,
I'm telling you.
well, I didn't hear the end. Sorry. I started saying no when you started talking about
Oh, I was just saying that
the
I can
Declaration.
verify that something is the color red in a very different way than I can verify that
Oh,
America was
yeah,
founded in
that I agree
76.
with. That I agree
And
with.
that's,
But
we have that
what I'm
7076 evidence for Christianity, not
no,
the we can
no, no,
verify it's.
no,
I
no,
mean, you just don't know about it. You never studied it.
okay.
It's just a fact. You haven't.
That's not true. I, for one, I went to a religious boarding school, grew up in a religious household. I don't I don't know what you think my upbringing was. I grew up in a super religious household.
No, I'm
That's
talking
just not
about
true.
a
I went to a
particular.
Christian boarding school. I lived at a church for part of my life as a child.
Yeah, but I'm not
What
talking
you're saying
about.
is not true.
Tell me about the Council of Nicaea.
Oh, I mean, dude, what? Yeah, I'm
That's
sorry.
what I'm saying. You don't know the history. So I mean, it's okay. I'm not like attacking you. I'm just saying
No,
you
I don't
don't
know
know. So you
every
don't
in
know
and
what the
out.
evidences are.
Wait, hold on. Do you think rote memory is knowledge? Because it's not.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Rote memorization isn't
I'm
knowledge.
not. It's not rote memorization. You've
That is rote
probably
memorization.
you've never heard of the Council
You
of
asking
Nicaea.
me to go off about a random fact that you name is definitionally rote memorization. That is a
What
random
I'm saying
fact
is you
that
haven't
you
looked
want me
into
to
the evidences.
elaborate on.
I'm just saying you don't know what the councils are. You don't know the history. You don't know the history. So you can't say we don't have the same stuff as 1776. We do.
Sure. No, you don't. But we can
Letters, cannons, all sorts of
Right,
documents.
right. So we can move on to the boat strikes, something we might have more agreement on. I assume, who knows? Trump, for those who don't know, to catch everyone up, in the Caribbean, we've been going on excursions, bombing boats. The left claims they're fishermen boats. The right obviously claims they're violent drug trafficker boats. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Where we're at is over 20 boats have been struck. It's about 90. I think it's give or take, around 90 have been killed. Again, should be noted, Colombia has alleged that multiple of these are civilians. So it's up in smoke if these are drug traffickers, how many are drug traffickers, this and that. a report that has this back in the mainstream, that has people up in smoke about it, is that on one specific boat that was bombed, there were two survivors who, when it first came out, it was that they were clinging to wreckage, right? Now, I guess their boat was capsized, overturned. They were sitting on the boat, however you want to depict it. They were shipwrecked. Trump, or Admiral Bradley, they're saying it wasn't Trump, whatever, ordered a second strike roughly 20 to 30 minutes later to bomb those targets. Seems like a pretty clear-cut war crime against international law, in my opinion. But as always, Swall, I want to let you jump in with what you've seen, what you think, before I, railroad too hard with my wokeness.
No, I don't think that there's any wokeness here. I think that, like you said, the fact that there's survivors who are unarmed, shipwrecked, however you want to, I consider both of those things shipwrecked. Your boat's overturned, you're screwed. Your boat's in pieces, you're screwed. And then we're killed. That gets rid of the narrative of like enemy combatants. Like it doesn't matter at that point. Even if they were beforehand, they're not now. They're not combatants. Okay, they're just helpless in the middle of the ocean, or I'm not sure exactly where it was. Caribbean. Yeah, that's the ocean. But obviously, as a Catholic, I want dignity and mercy and justice. I don't want just win at all costs. So I do not think that this is good, a good look, any of it. I'm not going to pretend I know whether Trump is the guy who called the shot, or I forget what you said the other gentleman's name was. But yeah, I don't think innocence, it, even if they're not innocent, I don't think unarmed people should be killed. Just as like a general rule, if they're not actively threatening you, I don't think we should murder them. I don't know if that's a hot take, but it's a take that I have as a pro-lifer. I don't think life is so unimportant that we can just kill
I,
them.
I
I
think
just
we talked
hate
about
that.
this. I think we talked about these briefly before. I don't remember, but I want to ask you regardless. Let's just say their claims are true in terms of like they are drug traffickers, right? Not the double back, because I think we agree on that one. Just the boat strikes in general, just them doing it. Let's say they are known to be drug traffickers. Are you supportive of missions like that, or do you
You
still
mean
think
just
that?
them originally, like they are trafficking drugs into our
Yeah, let's
country
say
and then
there
they
are
shoot them
drugs on the
down?
boat. They bomb them in the Caribbean. Yeah. Is that something you're against or for?
Yeah, you didn't ask me that before, I don't think. I don't know enough about the military. My gut instinct would be no, I'm not for that, but I wouldn't really know. I would need to know how realistic it is to like apprehend them when they first dock, or like I don't really know. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
just don't know how, because I am willing to accept, depending on what the drug is, that you could call it an act of aggression to bring drugs in. So I could understand that idea of it being defense at that point, but whether or not it demands you like kill them, I'm pretty much like unless your life is like actively in danger, I don't really think you should kill anyone. War is kind of a different thing altogether that I don't even want to have to think about. But yeah, I would imagine there's other ways to stop them. So that would be like the last resort. And Catholic moral teaching, just war theory, all of that says, war is like the last bastion of
Yeah.
we couldn't stop these people. So yeah, I would probably be against that.
Yeah, I'm against them regardless. Like even if it was like fentanyl, it could be the most deadly drug you could think of, right? I'm against it. I think it's notable that when we stop people at the border that are like trafficking, we don't bomb them or kill
Right. We
them,
don't just shoot them. That's what I'm
They
thinking. I'm like,
they
you
have a
could probably
trial
just
and go to
stop them.
jail. Yeah. So it's like, why is it different? 1,000 miles away. We're also like these boats, like a normal boat would have to fuel up. I think I read like 15 or 20 times to even get here. So it's like, it's not like it's even an immediate threat, which is important for like international law when you're going to qualify, like in terms of like the UN Charter, like the Geneva Convention, even when you're going to qualify these kinds of attacks, it needs to be in self-defense. It needs to be imminent threats. Like, even if it's not like immediate self-defense, but like, like if they have like the justification for bombing Iran, which is I think was obtuse almost, was, oh, they're building a nuclear facility. Well, if Iran has nukes, obviously that's an imminent threat, right? So then that's a kind of a way to weasel around it. Here it's a bit harder, I think, because it's a boat 1,000 miles away. They'd have to fuel up like 20 times to get here. There's no guarantee they were even coming here. Colombia's alleged some were civilians, these could be fishermen. especially on the one where you doubled back and you're bombing a boat that's
Yeah,
turned
that's
over.
crazy. Like you
It's
stopped them, dude. You stopped them.
exactly
Like
like it's
maybe they'll go home and try again by the time they get
no.
home way
So
later, but
I was watching a CNN panel after this, and this point actually made me laugh. The MAGA member on the CNN panel was like, was the radio still intact? Because if the radio was intact, they could call for another boat to come get them and pick up the drug. And I was like, you've lost it at this point. If that's your defense, you know.
and it's so disheartening as like I've said it many times, a man without a party, dude. Like I seem to be like one of the few voices. It's me, and like the only other ones I know are just also Catholics. But as we've discussed on the show, we even have our own problems within our
Yeah.
clique too. But at least the most people that I know who are like have a level head when it comes to left to right type of things, who are just somewhere kind of in the middle, but more leaning left, are Catholics. But it's
I
just
think we
like,
do a good job on this show.
do we? I do too. It's like, do people just not care about other people? Like I don't know. Even it's really hard for me. Like I've had deep conversations with buddies of mine about when it's okay because I call myself a pacifist. I'm against violence, but I don't consider if my life is an imminent threat, defending myself. I'm not being violent. I'm just stopping myself from dying. Like that's not. I'm not. Violent violence to me is like attacking somebody. You're attacking. You're being you're the aggressor, you know?
Yeah.
And so I've even been like, if somebody breaks into your house and I have a gun, I don't have a gun because I don't believe in violence. But
Mm.
if I had a gun, I think I have a moral obligation, unless I see them actively pointing a gun at me, to try to aim for their leg or something and not shoot their brains out.
Yeah.
Like I don't
I
know why
agree.
this guy's breaking in my home. Maybe he's a homeless dude and he's just looking for some warmth. I don't, you know what I mean? Like I'm not just gonna pop pop double cap. You're dead because you broke. Like no, that's still a human being. And I have no idea what conditions led them to being a drug dealer, a criminal who's breaking into my house, whatever. So I'm not just gonna senselessly just kill them. I don't know. I think that's a normal take, but it's not. So
I agree. You would think it is. I always tell people, and this is where I think the disconnect is. It's like there's a difference between like what I said, tell someone is I understand completely in the moment. It would be hard for you to have that moral
right,
clarity because of
right,
fear. So I'm not saying you're a
yes,
bad person if you don't,
no,
but it's a big hill to argue against to say that's not the morally right decision every time is to not just shoot someone in the chest,
right,
center mass, just because you hear a sound in your house. You know what I mean?
right, right.
But if it's a kid that stumbled in the
And
wrong,
I've even argued now as a Catholic, I'd have to think about it in a different lens. But back when I was an atheist, I even argued the best case scenario is a moral wash. It's not even a moral good, even if you stop them. It's just if even if you know if they were going to kill you and you defended yourself, I don't think it's like a moral good. I think it's just a neutral at that point. It's just a wash because I don't think taking life is just. I don't think it's good
yeah, I agree. I guess it just
inherently.
depends, how many people are in the house at that point. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily
Sure,
disagree with you there. But yeah, on
sure.
to our new segment, which
Yes.
maybe to our own fault, we didn't necessarily, I think, work out all the kinks. Like I don't
No.
know what we're gonna do after we
I figured we just kind of grade each other like, oh, that
that's
was
what I thought.
trash,
Yeah,
or
yeah, exactly. Grade each other and then talk, maybe give like where I think the argument fails actually, or something like that.
sure.
We'll figure it out for those watching. What it is we're talking about abortion. For those who don't know, me and Swaw's political relationship, so to speak, kind of started with an abortion debate. The first bit of content I think was when we debated abortion.
Hmm.
Obviously debated plenty of things since then. It's been a while since we've touched on abortion because it's kind of like, been beaten like a dead horse a bit. So we thought it would be fun for this, which is flipping the script, as I alluded to at the beginning of the episode, if that's the name we stick with. What we're going to do is I'm going to defend the pro-life position with what I think is the strongest argument. And then as we kind of just discussed, Schwal will grade me. I'll maybe see where I think the argument fails, where I think it works. We'll talk about it for a little bit. Swal will come in and he will defend the pro-choice position from what he thinks is the strongest argument, and we'll do the same. Though I will say, the gentleman in me, Swal, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
Let's have you go first
All right.
this time.
So I want to say this is like my one caveat. And I don't want this to sound like I didn't try or anything. I think I would do better with other topics just because like I have like been more on the fence about other topics, whereas abortion, I've always been steadfast pro-choice. So like I'm trying my best here. In that I think I have what in my opinion is the strongest argument, but it's more of like emotion based, intuition based, which is where I think pro-life is the strongest. That's why I wanted to add the caveat, because anyone who watches me debate knows that I almost strictly stick to like logic and numbers, which I'm not going to do.
Yeah.
So here, so I have a little script written. If I'm stepping into the shoes of someone that's making the best possible pro-life case, I think it's intuitive. I think it's emotional. Not that that makes it a bad argument, but it would appeal more to people's moral framework of protecting vulnerable life, which I do think in terms of how you want to build a society, I do think that's important. Like, I don't think that's something to gloss over. And so I think the strongest argument is saying, well, this should also extend to fetuses, right? Most people kind of feel an almost reflexive sense of care when they encounter something fragile, vulnerable. And I think it's an effective move to appeal to that human impulse. Again, it's beneficial in society, kind of to sort of say, like, we're wired to protect the vulnerable. As humans, we ought to protect the vulnerable. A sort of appeal to the potential or the what if that people can see themselves in. I think that allows you to resonate with what you're arguing for in ways that maybe, you know, trying to do numbers or logic even wouldn't in this kind of argument. To me, the argument would lean heavily on the idea that a fetus isn't a hypothetical life, it's an early life, and that all life should be protected. It being an early life, it is included in that protection, as distinguishing personhood wouldn't and shouldn't be a value here. There's also, I think, a powerful emotional dimension rooted in our experience as human beings. Many people like intuitively can see pregnancy as a relationship. Like, it's not just a biological process, it's a relationship between two humans. And it's easy to respond to potential life then with the same tenderness or the same empathy that we would like a baby, right? Or an actual life, or whatever word you would want to use. From this kind of perspective is where I think the pro-life view comes off as not about controlling women, not about ignoring needs or whatever, you know, pro-choice me would say in a different life. It's more so about expanding the circle of moral consideration to include all things that we consider humans, rather than what fits in like the arbitrary range of person. So in the Steelman version, the pro-life position, it's not punishment, it's not judgment. It's rooted in a belief that compassion should extend as early as it possibly can, and that abiding to those instincts reflects a commitment to broad, unconditional respect for human life. And that is my pro-life argument.
Okay, cool. So are we gonna do I do mine first and then we'll do the or
I think
should
we
I?
should talk about this first, probably.
Okay, okay, cool.
You can grade me. Go ahead and give
Yeah,
me
yeah, yeah.
your thoughts.
So at first I'm sure people have seen those comments on YouTube videos like just deleted my paragraph where they thought somebody was gonna go one direction and then they kind of pivot. So when you first started with the emotional argument and intuitions and talking about forget how you phrased it, but basically you know, things are fragile and blah 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 blah. At first, I was like, oh nah, he's gonna ignore the core, in my opinion, of the pro-life argument, which is the uh, it is a human life aspect. But then you ended up bringing that in and saying um, that you called it an early life, which I appreciated. And I like the language about expanding the circle of compassion. That makes us look good. I like that because actually today I got blocked by somebody finally, or actually they didn't block me, just unfriended me or whatever over my abortion stance. Somebody who it always boggles me when it's like, bro, you've been friends with me on here for years. Like, is this really like
Yeah.
news? But whatever, they got upset and you know, I just urged them to see. For me, I know you said this is something where you've always been on the pro-choice side. I've always been on the pro-life side when I was a Protestant, when I was an atheist, when I was a Catholic.
We
Never have I
debated it
ever.
when you were an atheist.
Exactly, exactly. So it's like I've never faltered either, but for me, it's pretty easy to have compassion for the majority of the pro-choice. Not so much the ones who are like, it's a baby and I don't care. Those people, it's hard for me to like feel bad for them, but or not feel bad, but like see their side so much. Whereas people who truly do not believe it's a life, well then like, yeah, fighting against abortion at that point to me is just obviously unthinkable. And for me, I feel like saying yes, that is in early life or a very, very young baby makes it unthinkable. And I think, as you said, intuition, most people start to agree the closer you get to 9 months, the more and more the stats bear out that people are like, no, I'm not okay. And it's because, yeah, obviously, as it starts to like look like a baby, like it's pretty, there are very few people who you're like the day before the baby is due, you do an early birth or whatever and just shoot it in the back. Like nobody, most people are going to be like, yeah, that's probably bad. And
Yeah.
so I think that the idea, to me, it just seems reasonable to not be so at each other's throats, understanding that the pro-choice are trying to protect women and the pro-life think that they're protecting both women and men just because babies are both or whatever, but are protecting everybody. So yeah, I didn't think that was horrible. I would obviously argue it differently.
So
Um,
A through F, where do I fall? Or 1 through
I
10,
go like
however, you can
I
pick our
go like
grading score for this segment.
let's do A through F. There's way more because
Yeah,
we can include like B
there
minuses
you
and C
go. Yeah.
pluses and stuff. So I think I'll give it like, as far as like not insulting the pro life position or pro lifers, I'd give it like an A. As far as like being a convincing argument to somebody, I think I'd give it more like a C plus, because I think people, like you said, are going to want to see more stats and other citing doctors and other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but
And
yeah, I thought it was pretty decent.
that's where I think it fails to me, I guess, just to give like my critique of my own argument. Why despite thinking it's the strongest argument, why it still fails for me. I think that might be insightful to do. And then
Sure,
you can do it for
sure.
yours as well. Yeah, I just think that it doesn't really pan onto reality for one in terms of uh we should distinguish personhood and a human for who we give rights in terms of harm, in terms of how it affects people in society. I'm not as hateful, I feel like, as some other pro-choice people are. So you kind of
I would agree in our experience
yeah, where
together.
they're, everyone who's pro-life is a demon. And, I'm sympathetic to a lot of it. Like I've always said, I'm fine with saying life begins at conception. I'm not even like you should have an abortion all 9 months necessarily. Though I will say sometimes I hear arguments for like legally not having a barrier that I think are compelling. It's just morally, obviously, I think. But I do think also another reason why the argument doesn't pan out to me is if you look at like abortions, most are happening prior to like, I think it's like 98% prior to 20 weeks and then 99.6 prior to like 22 weeks.
Mhm.
Most are happening for reasons. People don't just want to kill babies. So I think there's a lot of like room to say, how much do we want the government overstepping a doctor with a medical decision? And it's just a pragmatic thing to me. And then when you look at like the data, states with stricter abortion laws, higher maternal mortality, things like that, you think, even if I'm going emotionally, if you think of like victims, children victims, things like that, who might have to carry to term, I think are all problems. I know obviously I don't remember necessarily. It might have even changed because you're religious now. I don't know if you hold the position of like no exceptions or whatever, but yeah, that's where it
I
kind of
do.
goes for me. Yeah. Okay. Well, did you used
Um,
to not? Did you change on that?
um, there have been times in my life, I don't remember during the debate, but there have been times in my life, and I'm still now when it comes to like politically, because of the nature of a democracy, I'm like, if everyone in the country votes for a 12-week ban or like a heartbeat ban or whatever, I'll vote for that tomorrow. Like I don't need it. Like I want it to be everything, obviously, but like I'm
Yeah.
willing to take, baby steps, and I think that that's a reasonable thing to do in this type of a system, you know.
So
But
give us your
yeah, I
pro-choice.
just wanted to touch on one more thing there,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
now I got to remember what it was because you asked me that other question. It was something you said there. Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, just to kind of go back for a moment and touch on my frustrations as a pro-lifer. You said the sentence, "It's not like people just want to kill babies," and like, yes, but also no. But like, I'm willing to say that sentence too because I agree it's not the majority, but it is like an objective fact of reality that there are people who are having parties and birthday cakes and like, yeah, I can't wait to kill that. And I think it's mostly reactionary because they feel their rights are threatened, and so they're like becoming more extremist. I don't think it's like inherently they're like want to kill babies, but there are people who will say it is a baby. I don't care. They still shouldn't have rights. Blah blah. Like, and so there are people, but I'm willing to say, because I know that doesn't sum up the entire pro-choice position, that yeah, people aren't just
I would
out here just
so
doing it.
yeah, just I guess one more quickly. I would say almost nobody probably. I don't think there's anyone who. I mean, there's
I mean, I
probably
can pull
someone
up
you
social,
find
yeah, exactly, on
who's like, I just
Instagram.
want to kill a baby or something like that. But I think even people who are like, what's like the term I guess a right winger would use, like using abortion as birth control or like whatever,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I think even then, it's not that they want to kill babies, right? I think that there is an effect that happens. One, when you have sex, it's not about just reproduction. I think we kind of touched on that when we did debate this, but sex isn't just about reproduction. It could be a consequence. Does an action always justify the consequence to the point that you can't try to stop the consequence? I don't think so. I think leaving your door unlocked at your house doesn't mean that you have to let the person rob you. I think you can still try to stop it. And I think it's actually kind of similar to what we were talking about with the gun with someone in your house, where I would understand that somebody who would shoot someone who was in their house because of the fear, because of what happened. I think it's the same here. I could understand why someone would go to that extent with the fear and the life altering consequence of something like being pregnant when they didn't plan for it.
Yeah, the reason I brought that up was I just wanted to touch on, I feel like you being one of the exceptions, I just don't see that same, yeah, that's, it's not like people just want to kill babies, but I do see on our side pro birthers or forced birthers, and everyone's a forced birther, and nobody cares about
Yeah.
the baby. It's just a way to
Well,
control women. Like, no, nobody, again, the same way that nobody's saying, I can't wait to kill babies. Nobody's like, I can't wait to control women. There
that's
are some
actually interesting.
sickos who are like that,
Yeah.
but that's not the majority. Nobody,
Yeah.
like, most people don't think, like, most people aren't masterminds. They're
Yeah.
just people with
I agree.
a
See, part of
vague
me wants
opinion.
to, that's interesting. Part of me wants to agree that the hate might be worst on the left towards like pro-choicers might spew more hate to pro-lifers, but I don't know. I don't know.
It's just I
You
feel
guys
like
are more
it's
subtle
not
with your
less
hate.
hate necessarily. I don't think they
You
hate.
guys
It's
think we're
just,
doing genocide. You guys will like tell us we like genocide babies and stuff. So I don't know. We don't say anything like that about you.
well, I mean I think those are not necessarily like exactly equivalent, because one is just, you know, you're trying to control women isn't as, I hate, it's a weird sentence to say wanting
Yeah.
to control women's not as bad as genocide. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess it's not, but like it's still really bad, dude.
Well, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so like, yeah, those aren't equal. Like ours is a probably a worse claim, but I think that there are, I see, and it might just be the circles I run in. I see more pro life lifers saying like, yeah, there aren't nobody's just celebrating like wants to kill babies. I think, you know, their situation, they, or which can be another bad thing, is we infantilize people and we'll say like, you know, society just convince them.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people say, you know, arrest the doctors, not the women. And we try to say like they don't know what they're doing. Whereas it seems like on the other side, it's every pro-lifer just wants to, it's like nobody wants to control, nobody's thinking about that. But
Yeah.
anyways, I'll get to my thing. I wrote mine a little bit differently. I wrote mine like I'm less of saying like this is how I'd argue, and it's just a straight up like
Mhm.
as if I am the pro-choicer.
First time
So
we're feeling it out, you know?
yeah, yeah, and thank God our show's not big enough for a bunch of people start clipping it out, and like they just Schwa's pro-choice now. Like, so let me preface say I'm very much pro-life. This is just I'm
Yep.
acting.
Yep.
I'm
Yes.
acting.
Yep.
All right. So the pro-choice position, properly understood, is not rooted in convenience, child hatred, or nihilism. At its strongest, it is rooted in a conflict of moral goods where the state lacks the moral authority or competence to resolve that conflict with coercive force. At the heart of the pro choice argument is this question: does the government have the right to compel a woman, excuse me, to carry a pregnancy to term under the threat of criminal punishment when the pregnancy exists entirely within her body, with permanent physical, psychological, economic, and social consequences for her? And I would say, as a pro-choicer, pretending to be, no, at least not as a matter of law. Not because I think that unborn life is meaningless, but because pregnancy is not a neutral, and coercion is not morally simple like that. So even people who believe that life begins at conception disagree in practice about what level of sacrifice the state may mandate. The law does not compel parents, for instance, to donate organs to their born children, even if it would save their lives, and the parent would be able to walk away with something like, what is it, kidneys, I think, is something where we have two of them or something like that. And so that reveals that our legal system doesn't necessarily require total bodily sacrifice, even for somebody that everyone agrees is a human. So the pro-choice argument really is that if the state cannot compel that level of bodily sacrifice in any other context, why does pregnancy uniquely override bodily autonomy? So this doesn't mean that abortion is a good necessarily. It just means that the law, as a blunt instrument, doesn't have that sort of raw power to just, under the threat of what I would, it's violence. That's how the government works. Like they're basically, we're going to throw you in jail and, whatever. So yeah, I think when abortion is criminalized, it's not like it goes away. It goes underground, and people will, use coat hangers, go to doctors who are, veterinarians and performing abortions or doing stuff under the table, and that's going to, harm women. It might harm the babies. Failed abortions could be a problem then, all sorts of other stuff. And so I think that if the goal is fewer abortions, we should start, you know, access to healthcare, economic stability, maternal support, and things like that. And I think that in a society where we're going to have differing beliefs, it just makes sense for the law to operate on a consensus, rather than just one party's opinions. And so I would say, to end my argument here, that the pro-choice position doesn't reduce women, um, um, but that it acknowledges that pregnancy can involve medical danger, trauma, social collapse, coercion, abandonment, poverty, and all sorts of other issues, and that's just not the state's job to come in and mandate that. So yeah, that's my steel man case for abortion, I'd say.
Yeah, so there's a lot of parts of that I agree with. I obviously think appealing to the fact that if you want to stop abortion, banning abortion doesn't stop abortion, but like these other measures can limit it, like, these different things that will make people want to have pregnancies more. That's a good part. You argued a lot of it well. My only critique, my problem with it is, and I mean, you probably know from when we debated, I don't really like the bodily autonomy argument. It's not a path that I would ever argue,
Yeah,
mostly because I think it's like one of the easier ones to counter. I think it's pretty easy to say like our bodily autonomy isn't absolute. I can't walk up and punch you in the face because I have bodily autonomy. Well, why can I kill a baby then, right? So I don't think like
yeah,
bodily autonomy convinces anyone who thinks that a fetus is a baby and all of that. So to me, like I always draw the distinction, again, Swall knows, between a person and a human, because I think if the distinction's there, it's pretty pragmatic, just looking at one, how we give rights in society, and then, like I said, to not just repeat myself, just the statistics of maternal mortality going up, and the harm and effects that it has. Why would we prioritize a non-person to a person? That's the argument I always kind of hinge on. But as to the argument you gave, I think it was well structured within it. So I would lean like B minus, somewhere like that. I'll go B minus because I don't
yeah.
like bodily autonomy. But yeah, where does the argument fall short for you? What are your critiques of it, despite you thinking it's the strongest?
Yeah, and honestly, I should have included another thing I think is strong that like a Destiny will use is really pointing to, and I think you've used similar argumentation of pointing to end of life
Mm,
situations where, okay, well, that person's alive on like not test tubes, what do you call them? Breathing tubes
machine,
and
yeah.
whatever, hooked up to a machine, and
Life
he's
support.
alive, but you're
Yeah.
allowed to pull the plug. So what up with that? I think that I would have included some of that to make it a little bit stronger, but generally speaking, I think that this is the best argument. I think the now I'm just saying what's good about it. So let me just say that first, and then I'll get to the bad. Um, I think that it behooves pro-choicers to acknowledge, like you will, that it is a life. It is at least alive, and because anybody who starts from it's just a clump of cells, there's no life, I think you're going to be talking past each. I mean, there's nothing to be had there because we have to at least start on some level of common ingredients. And so I think that I did good at acknowledging that it's not saying like abortion's like a good thing or shout it from the rooftops, as you would say.
Can I say
Go
one
ahead.
thing quickly? And
Yeah.
now I do think it's alive wholeheartedly, but I do think a lot of people that argue that life begins at conception don't actually think that it's like if they knew what they considered life to be and what they don't consider life to be, they might not consider that life, I think. But I do personally. So like I do agree with you. But I do
How do
think
you
it's
mean? You
weird.
just don't, you think that these people wouldn't accept like skin cells and stuff, or?
Like most people don't consider life as just like an organic like process or system of cells, right? Or like the ability to of cells to reproduce or multiply. Like there's different way. Like life itself is kind of an arbitrary term, and there's different ways people distinguish it. But people will like it'll be people who like don't think like plants and stuff are alive. They're like, oh, why do we got to care about plants and trees? But life begins at conception, you know. And that's always funny to me.
My brother didn't know plants were alive till he was like 13, dude.
That's what I'm
I
saying.
remember we were sitting at dinner one time and we got into argument. He was like, "Look at an apple. Does it have a face?
Yeah,
No." And we were like, "That doesn't
that's
matter."
what I'm saying. So
But yeah, so where I think it falls apart is obviously for me, I think that the life to right is absolute and the number one most important right that we have as humans because we can't have any if we're not alive. And so I think that um to me, when we're talking about an innocent life, and now where you would, we don't need to care about plants, we don't need to care about animals, human life, and I'm okay admitting speciesism. Obviously, I'm a human. I'm going to care about humans more than I'm going to care about dogs, cats, or trees. Like I think that that's natural and inherent to us, and I don't think that there's any problem with that. And so I'm talking about human life. It's not just any life; it's a human life, and I think it fails in recognizing um, how not meaningless human life is, as we talked about with the boat story. I don't think it's as simple as like uh, as simple as this is going to cause me problems. Therefore, I can get rid of this person or this, if we don't want to call it a person, this life. I just don't think that that argument holds. Like you said with the bodily autonomy argument, I think it's pretty easy to argue. Well, there's two bodies. There's two different strands of DNA. Like it's just factually, like one body is inside of the other body. That's true, and the bodies are connected, but they're two different living organisms. They just are DNA wise. It's just two different creatures. One just is inside of the other, and
yeah.
so that's
Now, I
where I
agree
think
that's
it
a
kind of
rights
falls asleep.
violation. I agree it's a rights violation. And I do think that there's something to be said there, but I would never hinge my argument on bodily autonomy necessarily. I
Yeah.
don't think that's
Yes.
what gives the right, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's wise. When you argued with me, you argued about positive rights and stuff, and I actually wasn't familiar with that line of argumentation, so I felt like that was one of my weaker parts in that debate. Was just that was not a line of argumentation that I had really heard too much, and so I didn't have a great response. I think I did as best as I could on the fly, but
You
yeah,
know,
I think that's
it's funny.
stronger.
Before we wrap up, just funny. I think if and we don't like obviously have to, maybe if we run out of topics, we'll run it back one day. But I think we both would come into the argument way different because like now I would reject the premise of human rights almost absolutely. Like I would reject that the
What do
right to life
you?
exists. Like I don't think
So you would say there are no rights?
yeah, I don't think transcendental rights exist necessarily. I think
Okay.
that all of them are societally granted. So like, and I know that you're obviously religious now,
Yeah.
so you would argue on a lot of different grounds. So maybe if we ever
Yeah.
run out of topics,
I mean, I'm down to run back abortion. It's
in the
just
future.
like it's always just frustrating going into the debate where like I'm not gonna say no because I don't have perfect knowledge, but where like you're only there for the audience and you're not going to
Yeah,
convince the other person like at all. Like typically I want to do debates where I'm like so convinced that my argument is so strong that like any reasonable person can't deny it. But I think that both of us are so well versed in this particular topic because it's one of the biggest political conversations that we have as a country that
yeah.
it's not like we're going to hear like yeah the positive rights thing was new to me but like other than that it's not like oh my gosh, what bodily autonomy or oh my goodness, it helps the woman. Like there's nothing new that's gonna like
I agree, and I think you bring the strong arguments for pro-life, and then I bring the strong arguments for pro-choice, and then at that point, it's like
like
we're
right.
just bashing the same points, you know, into each other.
Exactly. And
So
it's like most people have heard all of these arguments.
yeah,
And that's like the thing. I did see a clip the other day that I thought was good more on the emotional and intuitive. It was somebody who had survived a failed abortion and they were asking a pro-abortion person essentially like I mean like I can't they had like a injury or whatever
yeah,
from the failed abortion and they were like so it's like you can't pretend that that fetus wasn't them because it's literally they have the effect of it. And so they were like, why did I deserve to die? And the person was like, and it's like, what do you say to that person?
Yeah.
Because they were conceived from a rape, and so that's why she was saying, like, in situations of rape and incest, like that's
I
so
think
sickening.
situations like that are so unfair though, because like
It was an unfair question because it was
you
it
have,
was
well,
pressuring,
it's
cornering
unfair
them for
because you
sure.
you have to come off as a dick to art. Like you can't not come off as a
I
dick. And I'm
exactly,
just
but
like,
it does
it was
point
still worth
to
it.
to I think people oversimplify this conversation sometimes because I think that does
Yeah, I agree.
point to something of like now you are staring that fetus or clump of cells in the face with the effects of the abortion and having to still say, yeah, no, you shouldn't be here. Like, you know what I mean? And so it can at least get them the wheels turning a little bit to consider a little bit more fully like, well, like that really will develop into a fully fledged being.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is a good segment for like, it's not so much uncommon ground, but like,
Yeah,
kumbaya moment,
we
like,
gotta find another one that works, maybe on one that we're closer to the edge or more tilt.
yeah,
Like I said, like you said, I don't think either of us are moving on this one. We've never
right,
had the other opinion or anything. But
right.
let us know what you guys think in the comments. Let us know if you enjoyed this kind of segment. We'll run it back. We have a bunch of new kind of in segments we'll probably be trying and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. So we appreciate your feedback every time. For those who haven't seen, for those who want to keep up, we're here every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we have a website. Make sure you subscribe, you add us to your playlist, you like, whatever the option is on whichever platform you're on. And until next time, peace.
Peace.